Have you ever wondered why some people seem to move through life with an invisible force field around them, where obstacles simply dissolve, doors open effortlessly, and resistance seems to evaporate in their presence? It's as if they're operating on a different frequency altogether, one where reality itself bends to accommodate their path. What if I told you that this isn't a rare gift bestowed upon the lucky few, but rather a vibrational clarity that you can deliberately cultivate and embody? Here's what most people don't understand about vibration. They think it's about repeating mantras, visualizing dream boards, or forcing themselves into artificial states of positivity. But stay with me here, because what you're about to discover goes far deeper than anything you've encountered in mainstream personal development. The truth is that when your vibration reaches a certain level of clarity and purity, you don't have to push, convince, or struggle anymore. Things that once felt like battles become effortless flows. People who would have resisted you suddenly become allies. Circumstances that seemed impossible begin to rearrange themselves in your favor. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. Now let's talk about what's really happening when you enter this state of vibrational clarity. Has this ever happened to you? You wake up one morning feeling different, somehow aligned in a way you can't quite explain, and suddenly the entire day unfolds with an almost magical precision. The right people appear at the right time. Solutions to problems you've been wrestling with simply present themselves. Opportunities emerge from nowhere. This isn't coincidence, and it's certainly not luck. What you're experiencing in those moments is your consciousness operating at a frequency that's in perfect harmony with the deeper intelligence that orchestrates reality itself. Carl Jung, one of the most brilliant minds in psychology, discovered something that changes everything when you truly understand it. He identified what he called the collective unconscious, a vast field of information and patterns that exists beneath our individual awareness. This isn't just an abstract, philosophical concept. It's an active, living matrix that's constantly shaping what you perceive, what opportunities become visible to you, and what possibilities can emerge in your life. The critical insight here is this. The way your personal consciousness interacts with this deeper field determines absolutely everything about your experience. When your vibration is clouded by doubt, fear, resistance, or unconscious patterns, you're essentially operating with a distorted signal. You might be broadcasting one thing while your deeper frequency is transmitting something completely different. But when you achieve vibrational clarity, when your inner state becomes so pure and aligned that there's no contradiction, no static, no interference, something extraordinary happens. The field responds, reality reorganizes, and what seemed impossible becomes inevitable. What you're about to learn is not just theory. It's a practical map that reveals exactly where you stand right now and shows you the precise pathway to enter that state of irresistible clarity. David Hawkins, a psychiatrist who dedicated his life to understanding consciousness, discovered something that completely transforms how we approach personal transformation. He mapped human consciousness on an actual energetic scale, and what he found was extraordinary. At the lower end of this spectrum, you find frequencies like shame, guilt, apathy, and grief. When someone is operating at these levels, it's not just that they feel bad emotionally. Their entire perception of reality becomes filtered through that density. They literally cannot see the opportunities, the solutions, or the possibilities that exist right in front of them. It's like wearing glasses with a dark, distorted lens. The world hasn't changed, but what they're able to perceive has been dramatically limited. Now, I want to go even deeper into this because there's a hidden truth here that changes everything about how you approach your own journey. Hawkins identified courage as the critical turning point on this scale. Below courage, you're essentially in survival mode, reacting to life, defending yourself, trying to protect what little you have. But above courage, something shifts fundamentally. You move from surviving to creating, from reacting to consciously shaping your experience. And as you continue to rise through acceptance, love, joy, and peace, your perception doesn't just improve slightly. It expands so dramatically that you gain access to entire dimensions of reality that were completely invisible to you before. This is where the real power lies. And if you're not already subscribed, consider joining us. What we explore here goes deeper than surface-level content. It's about genuine transformation. I'd love to have you along for this journey. But here's where most people get completely confused, and it's probably costing them years of unnecessary struggle. They've been taught that vibration is all about emotions, about feeling good, about maintaining positive feelings no matter what's happening around them, so they try to force gratitude, plaster on fake smiles, and pretend everything is fine when it clearly isn't. Has this ever happened to you? You try so hard to stay positive that you end up feeling worse, like you're failing at something that should be simple. That's because emotions aren't actually your vibration. They're messengers, they're indicators, they're effects of something much deeper. Your true vibrational frequency is determined by your state of consciousness itself, which is shaped by the invisible architecture of beliefs, convictions, expectations, and identity that you've been carrying around, often without even realizing it. These inner structures act like a lens through which you interpret everything. They determine what you notice in any given situation, what meaning you assign to events, what decisions you make in critical moments, and ultimately, what patterns keep showing up in your life over and over again. Write in the comments, I'm ready to see clearly, if this is resonating with you and you're beginning to understand how this revelation transforms everything. So if it's not about forcing positive emotions, what is the actual pathway to this state of irresistible clarity? Here's where complete honesty with yourself becomes non-negotiable. The kind of honesty that most people avoid because it requires looking at things they'd rather pretend don't exist. The absolute first step in any genuine transformation is identifying exactly where you are right now. Not where you wish you were, not where you tell others you are, but where you actually stand in this precise moment. And this goes far beyond simply noticing whether you feel happy or sad today. What we're talking about is recognizing the automatic patterns, the invisible responses, the deeply embedded structures of perception that have been running your life behind the scenes without your conscious awareness. Think about it like this. Every single reaction you have to a challenge is revealing something crucial about your current frequency. When something goes wrong, what's your immediate response? Do you look for who's to blame, or do you ask what this situation is trying to teach you? When an opportunity appears in your life, what happens inside you? Do you feel worthy of receiving it? Or does some voice whisper that it's too good to be true, that you'll probably mess it up anyway? These aren't just random personality quirks. They're precise indicators of the exact frequency at which your consciousness is currently operating. And understanding this gives you the power to make different decisions going forward, to choose a different path. But here's the revelation that almost nobody talks about in the personal development world, and it's probably the most liberating thing you'll hear today. The whole good vibes only mindset that's become so popular. The idea that you must feel positive all the time to maintain a high vibration, it's actually trapping people in lower frequencies while making them believe they're spiritually evolved. I know this might sound contradictory, but stay with me, because this understanding changes everything. When you adopt the belief that you must feel positive constantly, you've just created an impossible standard that sets you up for failure. And what happens when you inevitably feel sadness, anger, fear, or any other dense emotion? You add a layer of guilt and shame on top of the original feeling. You start judging yourself for feeling what you're feeling, which creates resistance. And that resistance is what actually lowers your vibration, not the original emotion itself. The universe doesn't operate on a static frequency of permanent happiness. Everything in existence moves in cycles, in rhythms. The seasons change, the tides rise and fall, day becomes night, and night becomes day. True high vibration isn't about denying half of the human experience. It's about developing a consciousness that can hold space for all emotions without being dominated by them, without losing your center, without forgetting who you really are beneath the temporary weather patterns of feeling. What actually elevates your frequency is conscious acceptance, the capacity to observe what's moving through you without identifying yourself as that movement. Drop a comment saying, "I accept all of me," if you're beginning to understand how this shift in perspective transforms everything about your journey. Now, I want to show you something that bridges the gap between everything we've been discussing and what's actually happening in your brain, your body, and the field of energy around you when your consciousness expands. Because this isn't just philosophy or spiritual theory. Modern science is now confirming what ancient wisdom traditions have been teaching for thousands of years. And when you understand both perspectives together, you gain access to a kind of knowledge that becomes transformative power. Quantum physics has completely shattered the old materialist view of reality. What scientists have discovered is that the solid, fixed world we think we're living in is actually mostly empty space and vibrating energy. The chair you're sitting on, the device you're watching this on, even your own body at the quantum level, these aren't solid objects at all. They're patterns of energy and information. And here's the part that changes everything. We're only perceiving about 5% of what actually exists. Our senses can only detect a tiny slice of the electromagnetic spectrum, which means there are entire dimensions of reality operating all around us right now that we simply cannot see with our ordinary perception. This isn't speculation, this is established scientific fact. And what it means is that when you expand your consciousness, when you enter that state of vibrational clarity, you're not just changing how you feel about reality. You're literally gaining access to layers of reality that were previously invisible to you. But it goes even deeper than that. Neuroscience has revealed something absolutely revolutionary about the relationship between consciousness and biology. Your thoughts and emotions aren't just abstract experiences floating through your mind. They're actively reprogramming your brain structure, creating new neural pathways, and even influencing genetic expression. Every time you make a conscious decision to observe your patterns instead of being swept away by them, you're literally rewiring the physical hardware of your brain. This is the hidden mechanism behind genuine transformation, and it's happening at the intersection where scientific understanding meets spiritual practice. If this resonated with you, hit that like button. It helps this message reach others who are genuinely searching for this kind of understanding. And this brings us to perhaps the most profound shift that's possible in human consciousness, the moment when you realize that everything you've been calling I is not actually who you are. The ego, that constructed sense of self, made up of your history, your wounds, your beliefs, your fears, your need to be right or look good or stay safe. This is not your enemy, but it is a severely limited version of what you actually are. The real turning point in anyone's journey happens when they can step back and observe this ego structure without being identified with it, without believing that this temporary construct is the totality of their being. Here's a question that can change everything. When you feel angry, who is it that's angry? When you notice a thought passing through your mind, who is the one noticing? There's the anger, and then there's the awareness of the anger. There's the thought, and then there's the consciousness observing the thought. Which one is really you? Leave a comment with "I am the observer" if this is landing for you and you're starting to recognize the difference between consciousness and the content of consciousness. When you start asking these kinds of questions with genuine curiosity, something fascinating happens. You begin to access that observer consciousness, that witnessing awareness that exists at a naturally higher frequency than any mental or emotional content. And from that elevated perspective, dense energies that used to grip you for hours or days begin to dissolve almost immediately. You're no longer trapped in the drama of the ego's story. You're the space in which all stories arise and fall away. But this understanding of observer consciousness isn't just theoretical. It becomes your greatest tool when life throws you into those inevitable storms of intense emotion. Because let's be honest, no matter how expanded your consciousness becomes, you're still going to feel fear sometimes, anger sometimes, deep sadness sometimes. That's not failure. That's being human. The real test of vibrational mastery isn't whether you can maintain peace when everything is going smoothly. Anyone can do that. The true revelation of how far you've come shows up in those moments when the storm hits, when the emotion feels overwhelming, and yet somehow you manage to remain anchored in that witnessing awareness. Here's where the practical impact of everything we've discussed becomes crystal clear. When a dense emotion arises, let's say it's anxiety about a decision you need to make, you have a choice in how you relate to it. The old pattern, the unconscious pattern, is immediate identification. I am anxious. This anxiety is who I am right now. I need to get rid of this feeling as quickly as possible because it's unbearable. And in that identification, you've just collapsed your consciousness down to the level of the emotion itself. But there's another way, a path that requires practice but becomes more natural every time you choose it. You notice the anxiety arising, and instead of collapsing into it, you create a tiny bit of space. You say internally, "There is anxiety present in my experience right now." Do you feel the difference in those words? You haven't denied the emotion or pretended it isn't there, but you also haven't confused it with your identity. And then comes the crucial step. You welcome it without judgment. When you can greet even fear or anger with a kind of gentle curiosity, asking, "What are you here to show me?" the entire energetic dynamic shifts. You're no longer at war with yourself, which means you're not wasting energy on internal resistance. Your breath becomes the bridge between your body and your consciousness. When you breathe deeply and deliberately while feeling a dense emotion, you're literally giving that trapped energy permission to move through you instead of staying stuck. And here's something that makes all the difference. Remember that nothing lasts forever. Not the joy, not the pain, not the fear, not the excitement. Everything is temporary. Everything is in constant motion. When you remember impermanence in those difficult moments, you gain access to a kind of patience and compassion that itself operates at a higher frequency. Write "I choose consciousness" in the comments if you're committed to making this a daily practice, not just an interesting concept. Here we are at the end of this journey together, and if you've made it this far, that says something important about you. Most people would have clicked away after the first minute looking for a quick fix or an easy answer. But you stayed because you recognized that real transformation requires depth, understanding, and a willingness to look at things from angles you may never have considered before. That matters. None of this works unless you actually practice it. Knowledge without application is just entertainment, just information floating in your head that never touches your actual lived experience. The transformation you're seeking happens in those small daily choices, Those moments when you catch yourself about to react automatically, and instead you pause, you breathe. You ask yourself, what am I accepting as truth in this moment? Every single time you make that conscious choice, you're rewiring your nervous system, expanding your perception, raising your baseline frequency. If this resonated with you, if something shifted in how you understand consciousness and vibration, I'd love for you to hit that like button. Not because I need the validation, but because it helps this message reach other people who are genuinely searching for this kind of understanding. There are so many voices out there promising instant results with no effort, and honestly, we need more spaces where people are willing to dive deeper, to explore what's actually true, rather than what simply sounds appealing. And if you're not already subscribed to this channel, consider joining us. What we do here is explore these intersections between ancient wisdom and modern science, between spiritual understanding and practical application. Every video is designed to give you something real, something you can actually use to expand your consciousness and transform how you experience reality. This isn't about entertainment, it's about genuine evolution, and I'd love to have you along for that journey. Leave a comment saying, "This message was meant for me," if you feel like this video found you at exactly the right time. I read every single comment, and I'm genuinely curious about where you are in your own process of expansion. And listen, there's a video right here that takes what we've explored today even further. It dives into the practical techniques for maintaining elevated states even when external circumstances are challenging. Click and continue with me over there. I think you'll find it's the perfect next step from where we are right now. Thank you for being here, for staying present, and for choosing consciousness. I'll see you in the next one.